Okay, now we're on malware analysis basics, or if we have any more, right? We're on, yes, malware analysis basics. Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we're on malware analysis basics, CySA plus static versus dynamic analysis. Introduction. Hello students. No, I never say hello students. I don't know why I put that in there. I say hello everybody, because I want to include everybody, right? Welcome to our deep dive into malware analysis basics for CySA plus certification. In this YouTube video, we'll explore the fundamentals of analyzing malware, focusing on two primary approaches, static analysis and dynamic analysis. Understanding these techniques is crucial for identifying and mitigating malicious software, both for the CySA Plus exam and real-world cybersecurity. What is malware analysis? We went over this before, right? More on the malware forensics side of it, right? The malware analysis side of it, but malware analysis is the process of examining malicious software to understand its behavior, purpose, and impact. It helps cybersecurity analysts identify threats, determine their capabilities, and develop effective countermeasures. Why is malware analysis important? Threat identification reveals what malware does. Data theft, ransomware, or espionage. Incident response guides containment, eradication, and recovery efforts. Defense improvement, informed signature creation, and security hardening. Types of malware analysis. There are two main approaches to malware analysis, static and dynamic. Each has distinct methods, tools, and use cases. Static analysis, examining malware without executing it, typically by analyzing its code or structure. Key features: review file properties, code, and strings without running the malware. Identifies the indicators like hashes, embedded URLs, or suspicious functions. Safe as it avoids executing malicious code. Techniques: file inspections, check file metadata headers or hashes. MD5 SHA-256, right? Disassembly. Use tools to view assembly code or decompiled instructions. This can help you figure out what the attacker is actually trying to do, right? String extraction. So we have strings command in Linux that we use, and this will identify hard-coded strings inside of the .exe file or whatever it is, right? Whatever the malware file is. Hard-coded strings like IP addresses or commands. So we have the strings command, right? The suspicious exe file. Different tools that we have is PEID, analyze Windows PE files for packer or compiler signatures. Ghidra, open source tool for reverse engineering and decompilation. Strings extracts readable text from binaries. VirusTotal scans files for known malicious signatures. When to use early stage analysis when you need a quick understanding without execution risk. Advantages: safe as no execution occurs. Reveals code structure and potential indicators. Challenges: obfuscated or packed malware can be hard to analyze. May miss runtime behaviors. With dynamic analysis, we have executing malware in a controlled environment. Key in on controlled environment, because don't do this on any system that you don't have control over or isn't secure. In a sandbox, right? Make sure it's in a controlled environment to observe its behavior. So we have like Cuckoo sandbox, right? Cuckoo, whatever you want to call it. Runs malware in a sandbox or virtual machine to monitor actions. Captures runtime behaviors like network traffic, file changes, or registry modifications. Requires a secure, isolated environment to prevent harm to your actual hardware, right? Techniques: sandboxing, run malware in a controlled environment to observe the actions. Network monitoring, capture traffic to identify C2 servers or data exfiltration. So you'd be running Wireshark or TCP dump or T-Shark in the background. System monitoring, track process creation, file access, or registry changes. We have Wireshark-I for the interface and ETH. We went over a lot of these tools over and over again, but Cuckoo sandbox again, automated sandbox for malware execution and analysis. I don't know how it probably, it's actually probably a good one, right? Wireshark captures and analyzes network traffic. We could also use a process monitor for a lab like this. Track system changes on Windows registry file system. RimNux, a Linux distribution for malware analysis. Really? I gotta look that up because that sounds really cool. That sounds awesome because I never heard of that before. SANS Institute. I'll just look at their rimnux.org. That is like the coolest thing ever. Rimnux, I'm definitely giving this a try. And I'm actually gonna try to do something with it. It might be on my Proxmox server, right? But let's see what they're all about. I'm not gonna You can install it in a container like a Docker container as well. Read documentation. Rimnux. So it's based on Ubuntu, right? Which incorporates many tools that malware analysis use to examine static properties of suspicious files, statically analyze malicious code, dynamically reverse engineer malicious code, perform memory forensics of an affected system, explore network interactions for behavioral analysis, investigate system-level interactions of malware, analyze malicious documents, and gather and analyze threat data. So this just shows everything that I'm teaching you guys is like legit stuff that you actually need to know, because it'll help you in the real world when you're actually are a cyber analyst. But this course it's going to go over everything, I believe. But I'm really liking Rimnux. I might actually make a video on it, make a video in this course on it, but it really doesn't say how you would analyze and do that stuff with it. So let's go to gather and discover the tools, right? So this is like gather and analyze data. Oh, it has a bunch of different tools on here that is used to help analyze this stuff. Identify and classify Yara rules, right? We have Scalpel car. This has literally every tool you would need as a malware analysis, right? That is insane. Just knowing about this and actually playing around with it, I would love to play around with Rimnux. I'm not saying I would know how to use every single tool on it, right? Nobody is going to know how to use every single tool on it. But it's just insane that they actually have this out. So we have tools that you can use to statically analyze code, extracts contents of PyInstaller generated PE files. Well, we talked about Python bytecode disassembler and decompiler. So that's saying that the malware is using Python code. So this is how you would decompile that Python code, right? If I ever become a malware analyst, I'm never going to just be a malware analyst. I'm going to be other things too, like a blue teamer, stuff like that. But looking at this, there's so much like tools and stuff that you can use on here that are used for specific things. Like this is for the bytecode and disassembler and decompiler. This is to extract the contents of a PyInstaller generated PE file, which is insane. We have generate Magica, identify file type using signature, detected easy, determine types of files and examine file properties, Yara rules, statically scan a file. So this is what I'm talking about with this static file analysis, which is insane. Like we have deobfuscation here, CyberChef, right? Malchive, 1768.py, analyze Cobalt, strike beacons. This has literally it probably doesn't have every tool, but it has literally like the majority of tools that you would need to analyze malware. So that's a good thing to look at. Rimnux. Let's look at Cuckoo Sandbox for a second, because I just want to look at it. And I'm sure Rimnux would have that in it or allow you to install it. Let's look at, let's see, 1 second. Read the docs. I don't really know how to use it but this is sort of like a diagram of how it would work. You have Cuckoo host responsible for guest and analysis, management, start analysis, dumps traffic, and generates reports. You have analysis guest, a clean environment when run a sample. The sample behavior is reported back to the Cuckoo host. Virtual network and an isolated network where run analysis virtual machines. So it is an isolated network where only the VMs can talk to each other. The VMs can not be able to talk to anything else on the network, which I'm pretty sure you'd have to set it up in the correct way for it to actually be secure and stuff. It's just not going to work out of the box, I wouldn't think. But we'll see whenever we do get into this stuff like this. So we have Wireshark. We know about Wireshark a little bit. When to use, when you need to understand runtime behavior or confirm static analysis findings. Advantages: reveal actual behavior including runtime, unpacking, or network activity. Captures dynamic interactions missed by static analysis. Challenges: requires a secure, isolated environment. Malware may detect sandboxes and alter the behavior. That's always a thing it could do, right? It could, someone's watching, someone's trying to analyze what I'm trying to do. So I'm just gonna not execute whatever I was gonna execute because I'm in a sandbox right now. So that's like one of the things you run into, right? These malwares are getting more advanced, and like I said, they can detect the sandbox and they just won't do what they said they were gonna do. And they know you're going to try and analyze it and do stuff like that. So they're not going to like send out or really do anything, right? Comparing static versus dynamic analysis. Execution, right? Aspect. Static analysis, no execution, right? Execution with dynamic analysis, we execute the malware inside of a sandbox. For static analysis, the safety of it. Safer, no risk of infection. For dynamic analysis, the safety is riskier. Requires isolation, being isolated on a VLAN or something like that, you know what I'm saying? So that won't be on the subnet where all the critical stuff is. Static analysis focus, code structure, and metadata. So it's focused on the code and the structure and the metadata of the code. Dynamic is more focused on runtime behavior and system impact. So you need to know both static and dynamic aspects, right? Ghidra, strings and virus total. Of course, there's more tools than that, but strings definitely does give you a good biopsy of it, right? It gives you like a bunch of stuff, right? With dynamic analysis, for the tools, we have QQ Sandbox, Wireshark, Process Monitor. For use cases, for static analysis, we have initial assessment, signature creation. For dynamic analysis, we have behavior analysis and command and control detection. Because you're not going to really be able to detect that command and control actually sending its requests and stuff and outputs and stuff if you're not actually executing it. For static analysis challenges, it's obfuscated, right? They hide their code, they encrypt it, they do all kinds of things to avoid detection. They basically compress it and they hide it in zip files where they can unzip it. They basically, what I said before, right? They try and get past people by zip file, different zip file, another zip file, another zip file, another zip file, and all the way down, like, I don't know how deep it would be, but like, let's just say it was 10 files deep, 10 zip files deep, until you actually got to the malware.exe, whatever it was. Then they have a script that unpacks all of that and then runs the malware, right? And never use that for malicious purposes. That's just an example of how attackers would try and bypass detection. Oh, this is just an ordinary zip file. They'll even put files in the first folder of the first zip file to make it look like, oh, it's just a zip file that has zip files inside of it. That's weird. Why would you want zip files inside of zip files? He might be doing something malicious, but usually it can't detect it, stuff like that. But you just gotta think about that. Challenges, dynamic analysis, sandbox evasion, set up complexity, right? Advanced networking, stuff like that when you get into dynamic analysis, because you want to isolate off your network. You don't want worms and all this malware and stuff getting on your other systems. That would be awful. You don't want your network being compromised because of something stupid you did, right? Use a safe environment. Perform analysis in an isolated VM or sandbox with no network access unless monitoring traffic. Example, use VirtualBox with a snapshot. Now, I mean, VirtualBox has vulnerabilities, right? VM escape, I mean, is very, very on the rise. People are getting all these different, like, ideas out of their head, and it just works, and these vulnerabilities work. They're basically pen testing, right? But they're making this malware able to be able to use these vulnerabilities that they found. And I don't condone any of it, right? But we check the file hashes on VirusTotal or extract strings to identify indicators. SHA-256 sum, right? You're trying to get the hash file out of it, the hash value out of it. Combine both approaches. Use static analysis to guide dynamic analysis. Identify URLs to monitor. Identify URLs to monitor. Correlate findings for a complete picture. You'd preserve the evidence. Create forensic copies of malware samples to avoid altering originals. Document findings. Record indicators, hashes, IPs, and behaviors for incident reports. Practical example. Analyzing a suspicious file, right? Static analysis, you would, in a secure environment, this is what you do. Making sure in like a sandbox, which would be secure environment, right? Not always secure because, like I said, that malware can change itself. It could even change itself to a different hash file. So whenever you go to do this and you try and verify the hash file, I'm not the same hash file, I changed myself because I had another file change it for me, right? But then they extract the strings to identify suspicious URLs to commands. They strings malware.exe and they grep out for HTTP, right? Trying to find anything that says HTTP because HTTP is used to extract data a lot of the times, right? Use Ghidra because they're not caring if you're stuff that they're trying to extract is encrypted. They're just wanting to get the encrypted stuff out. Use Ghidra to inspect the code for malicious functions, like they're creating a remote thread, right? Dynamic analysis, run the file in Cuckoo, whatever you call it. Sandbox to observe behavior. Monitor network traffic with Wireshark. Looking for a specific destination IP address. Use process monitor to track file or registry changes. Correlate findings. Match a URL from static analysis with C2 traffic in Wireshark. Confirm malicious process creation in Cuckoo reports. Document, record, hash, IPs, and behaviors for the incident report. Challenges in malware analysis, obfuscation. Malware may use packers or encryption to hide code. Right? They're never just gonna... Hackers use encryption as well because they don't want to know that that's a malware, right? They just want to think that that's encrypted thing, but they hide the malware in encryption. Like I said with the zip files, how they try and hide it with that as well. But a lot of the times they can detect that, right? But going as zip file, how are they going to know that it's all the way down, and different zip files to try and avoid detection, right? Anti-analysis techniques, malware may detect VMs or sandboxes and alter behavior. Resource constraints, dynamic analysis requires significant setup and compute resources. Evolving threats, polymorphic malware changes signatures. Yeah, like I said, that malware may be changing itself. Oh, it sees you trying to do a certain command on it. It might change the hash file on it. Like I said, it's going to be changing. It's going to be ever evolving threats, complicating the detection, which it's insane that we're having malware come out like this. I do not condone any of it. I do not want anybody to get malware. But this is the day and age we're in, where malware can just be created out on a whim, right? Have ChatGPT or any artificial intelligence text bot, right? Go make you a certain type of malware, right? Which is crazy now. Understand the differences between static and dynamic analysis. Know key tools like Ghidra, Wireshark, and Cuckoo Sandbox. Be familiar with artifacts like hashes, strings, and network traffic. Explain how malware analysis supports incident response. Practice analyzing sample files in a lab environment. So that's going to be it for malware analysis, right? Through static and dynamic approaches, right? But yeah, CySA is going to cover some malware analysis stuff. So just be ready for that. But thank you everybody for watching. I hope this video helped you. If it helped you, please subscribe.